Green Living at Home is brought to you by Nedbank. Make things happen.
In South Africa, we love our gardens. We love spending time outside with our families, tending to our own personal outdoor spaces. Unfortunately, many of our gardens aren't environmentally friendly. We wastefully irrigate them with municipal water. We control insects with harmful chemicals. And we include exotic plants that aren't suited to our climate or our local bird life. There are many ways to change to a more eco-friendly way of gardening. We can irrigate using only water we've collected ourselves, either through grey water systems or rain collectors. We can start an organic vegetable patch to grow our own food, or we can switch to an entirely indigenous garden.
Well, indigenous landscaping or indigenous gardening is anything and everything local to South Africa. Anything from the Cape Point right up to our furthest borders. Indigenous to South Africa is obviously our local plant life.
Kim Gaskell, with the help of landscaper Jacques Flock, has converted her whole garden into an indigenous one.
Well, we start off exotic like everyone else does, just pure ignorance. And then my husband and I are very outdoor people, and we've hiked a lot in the Drakensberg, in the Eastern Transvaal. And I think with all that, the passion just started, and getting aware of all the little things, all the little insects and the birds, and that's where that sort of grew. And then I met Jacques and Suzette, and I slowly started adding indigenous, which wasn't really working. And then they came in and they then helped me. And then before I knew it, I'd ripped out whole flower beds that were like 20 years old and replacing it with indigenous.
What we've done in this garden is, obviously many years ago we've started here, but we were fortunate that our client is an enthusiast, indigenous enthusiast. And we started designing, obviously, around creating an indigenous environment. We created a small water feature at the bottom end of the garden, which she also had some indigenous fish and tilapias and so on. And as the garden evolved, obviously all the exotics started to be eradicated, and we introduced all the indigenous.
We come here, we feel like we're in the bush. We're in the middle of Sandton busy fourways. And you walk in here, that's what people are amazed at. They'll walk in here and they can't believe that this exists in this busy cosmopolitan shopping centres all around you. And you come in here and it's just so peaceful.
Indigenous gardens have a number of benefits over exotic ones. For starters, if you plant correctly, you'll use much less water than before, as local plants have evolved to suit our climate. This doesn't mean that you can only plant aloes and cacti, though.
Your more water-wise garden plants is obviously things that adapt to more drier climates, but we've got such a wide variety of plants that we can create a very beautiful garden with water-wise plants. You know, a lot of people think indigenous and they think thorn trees and aloes, but there's a lot of shrubs and ground covers and plants, flowering plants, which is very much water-wise and can adapt and use very minimal water.
Also, just by planting the right plants, you can drastically reduce the amount of pesticides you use.
You companion plant, okay, so that's complementing each other. One vegetable will enhance another one, and another one will protect it from those insects.
Companion planting and planting certain plants that deter certain pests help with, obviously, not having to go the chemical route.
I hate the thought of poisons and insecticides and God, people who spray the first bug they see. It just freaks me out.
However, the biggest advantage of having an indigenous garden is the fact that you'll attract all kinds of local fauna to your garden.
The indigenous garden, I believe, is for the individual that would love to bring in nature, bring in a different kind of wildlife or indigenous wildlife besides that which you'd ordinarily find. So you'll have your butterflies and you'll have moths and you'll have different bird life.
I have never seen so many butterflies this season. It will take time, obviously, because they'll slowly come in and discover, host plants, and they'll lay their eggs. The birds that have come in, I've got cormorants and green herons. We've had grey hornbills nest here, which is incredible to watch. Birds are nesting all over the place.
I think most South Africans love the outdoors. Most South Africans are in South Africa and stay in South Africa because they love our climate and our natural fauna and flora and wildlife. And that's why when we introduce it into a normal household or normal house environment, we start attracting the things out when we go to the bush. You know, we start, that wildlife we see there, except now obviously for your bigger things, but we start seeing all these different elements come back into our living spaces. And that is what Indigenous Garden is all about, is creating an eco-environment with not just for you, but for the animals and for the wildlife.
I'm seeing the caterpillars and the little pupas and the butterflies emerging, and I'm seeing dragonfly pupate, and it's tadpoles becoming frogs. And can you imagine for children, for me, to be in a garden like this? It's just such an education.
Many people think that Indigenous gardens are dull and lifeless, with only variations of green and brown as the colour palette presented. The truth is, Indigenous gardens can be just as full of colour and splendour as a more exotic one.
When you talk to somebody about Indigenous, and the first thing they think is dry. It's like they think acacia, storm trees, and they think aloes, and they think grasses, and you know, a dry look. And I think this is the perception people stick on. But when you think of all the different kind of plants one can use, you know, we've got 25,000 different species only in the Cape Point, which, you know, we in the Indigenous and nurseries use only a fraction of that. So you know, there's our flowering plants. We've got beautiful mixes of flowering ground covers, shrubs and trees.
This garden has never ever not got colour. Look, you become aware of it. You start learning to plant stuff. Okay, so that's flowering now. These are aloes flowering now. So then the other aloes will flower in a couple of months' time. And you learn to plant stuff to complement other things, and then when that's dying down, the next thing will come up, and you've always got colour. It's never ever bare.
Next week we head indoors to see what options are available for those who want an eco-friendly interior design.
Green Living at Home was brought to you by Nedbank. Make things happen.